2 days ago, Canada, a nation often perceived as a stable, predictable neighbour, electrified the political world by electing a leader who campaigned not on domestic issues, but on a visceral rejection of Donald Trump's America. The winning party, once a distant underdog in polls, surged to victory with a simple, incendiary message: "This is a vote against Trump. If you hate him, vote for me." And they did, overnight. Canada's political landscape shifted, sending tremors through Washington and Wall Street. But this wasn't just about one election. It was a symptom of a deeper, global resentment, one that's now boiling over into trade wars, tourism boycotts, and financial retaliation. This series will unravel the interconnected crises sparked by U.S. economic policies, from tariffs to debt dependency and their fallout across continents. In Part 1, we dissect the Canadian election as a proxy war, how anti-Trump sentiment became a winning strategy, the collapse of cross-border trust, why Canadians and Europeans are avoiding the U.S., tariffs as a double-edged sword, who really pays the price, the debt trap, Japan and China's leverage over the U.S. economy, the Ukraine war's hidden bill, how borrowing fuels conflict and who's bankrolling it. 1. The Canadian election, a referendum on Trump. The winning Canadian leader's campaign was a masterclass in harnessing global discontent. Polls showed Canadians overwhelmingly viewed Trump's trade wars, immigration crackdowns, and America First rhetoric as threats to their economy. The message resonated. A vote for me is a vote against chaos. Economic fear-mongering worked. Canada sends 75% of its exports to the U.S. Trump's threats to renegotiate NAFTA, now USMCA, terrified farmers and manufacturers. The winning party framed the election as a shield against U.S. volatility, tourism as a casualty. Bookings for summer travel to the U.S. plummeted. "Normally, we'd flock to New York or Florida," said a Toronto travel agent. "Now, we're choosing Europe, anywhere but America." The ripple effect. European leaders took note. If Canada, a staunch U.S. ally, could rebel, what stopped others? 2. America is closed for business. The tourism and trade freeze the U.S. relies on foreign visitors to buoy cities like New York, Orlando, and Las Vegas. But Trump's tariffs and the global backlash have triggered a silent boycott. Data tells the story. Tourism. Hotel bookings from Canada and the EU are down 40% year over year. The U.S. Travel Association warns of $150 billion in lost revenue. Trade. The EU's retaliatory tariffs on bourbon, jeans, and motorcycles have crippled small exporters. A Kentucky distillery laid off 30% of its staff. The psychological impact. Americans don't realize how much the world's attitude has shifted, said a Berlin diplomat. Your country used to be aspirational. Now it's seen as hostile. 3. Tariffs. Attacks on Americans. Not China. Trump's signature policy, slapping tariffs on imports, was sold as punishing China. In reality, it backfired. Who pays? Example. A 25% tariff on Chinese steel means U.S. construction companies pay 25% more. Those costs trickle down to home buyers and infrastructure projects. The Biden twist. Biden raised Trump's 5% tariff on Chinese EVs to 100%. A $30 zero BYD car now costs $60 as a zero, effectively banning it. Meanwhile, Europe embraces BYD, calling it the future. Retaliation is global. China targeted U.S. soybeans, crushing Midwest farmers. EU plans tariffs on U.S. tech giants. Japan quietly reduced holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds. 4. The debt bomb. Japan and China own the U.S. The U.S. government owes $35 trillion, an impossible sum. Worse, its biggest creditors are geopolitical rivals. Japan, $2 trillion, the largest holder of U.S. debt. Recently signaled it may slow purchases, spooking markets. China, $1 trillion. Despite tensions, China profits off U.S. deficits. We lend you money to fight Russia in Ukraine, a Beijing official smirked. The Ukraine connection. The U.S. funds its war effort by borrowing, not taxing. If creditors demand higher interest rates, the war machine stalls. 5. The coming recession. A system built to crash capitalism's dirty secret? It collapses every 4-7 years. The last crash was 2020. We're overdue. Warning signs: consumer debt at record highs. Credit card defaults are soaring. Corporate layoffs, 85. Zero job cuts announced in Q1 2025. The tariff trigger, trade wars, could accelerate the downturn. In 2001, China joined the World Trade Organization, WTO, a move Washington supported, believing it would tether Beijing to Western rules. Instead, China executed the most rapid industrialization in history, lifting 800 million out of poverty, dominating global supply chains and surpassing the U.S. in manufacturing output by 2010. Today, as America slaps tariffs on Chinese goods, a stark reality sets in: the U.S. lost the economic war before it even noticed the battle had begun. This installment examines the factory of the world, how China's state capitalist model outmaneuvered American neoliberalism. The BYD phenomenon, why China's electric vehicle dominance terrifies Detroit. The hollowing of America, the 50-year betrayal of U.S. manufacturing workers. Taiwan and semiconductors, the real stakes behind the chip war. The inevitable clash: can the U.S. contain China, or is decoupling a fantasy? 1. China's playbook: state capitalism versus Wall Street short-termism. While U.S. corporations chased quarterly profits, China played the long game. 5-year plans with teeth, Beijing directed subsidies, infrastructure, and education to strategic sectors, e.g. renewables, EVs, AI. Result? China now produces 80% of global solar panels, 70% of lithium-ion batteries, 60% of electric vehicles. BYD outsold Tesla in 2023. Forced technology transfers. U.S. firms like GM and Apple had to share tech to access China's market. Now, Chinese competitors beat them at their own game. The Belt and Road trap. Loans to developing nations tied them to Chinese infrastructure and political influence. Quote, the U.S. taught China capitalism. China mastered it. Former U.S. Trade Representative 2. BYD, the car that exposes America's weakness. In 2008, Warren Buffett invested $230 million in BYD, a little-known Chinese battery maker. Today, it's worth $90 billion and makes the world's cheapest, most advanced EVs, the tariff dodge. Biden's 100% tariff blocks BYD from the U.S., but it's flooding Europe and Latin America. A BYD Seagull sells for $12.0, half the price of a comparable U.S. EV. Vertical integration. BYD owns mines, battery plants, and chip factories. U.S. automakers rely on outsourced parts and volatile supply chains. The irony: BYD's name means build your dreams. For laid-off auto workers in Michigan, it's a cruel joke. 3. The betrayal of American labor. The U.S. sacrificed its industrial base for shareholder profits. The offshoring wave. 1979. 5 million U.S. manufacturing jobs. 2025, 12 million, despite a doubled population. Corporate lies. Companies promised automation would replace lost jobs. Instead, wages stagnated, while CEO pay soared 1% since 1980. The Rust Belt's revenge. Trump's 2016 victory was built on this rage, but his tariffs didn't bring factories back. Data point: the U.S. has fewer factories today than in 1941, the year it entered WP. 4. Taiwan, the semiconductor sword of Damocles. China's threat to invade Taiwan isn't about nationalism. It's about chips, TSMC's monopoly. Taiwan makes 90% of the world's advanced semiconductors. If China controls TSMC, it could cripple U.S. tech and defense systems. America's failed fix. The CHIPS Act spent $52 billion to revive U.S. chip fabs. But without Taiwanese engineers, Intel struggles to match TSMC's 3 Netim Tech. The nuclear option. If China blockades Taiwan, iPhone production stops within weeks. 5. Can the U.S. really decouple? Washington's dream of isolating China ignores three truths. The Walmart problem. 70% of goods in U.S. stores are made in China. Replacing them would spike inflation. The debt bind. If China dumps U.S. treasuries, interest rates explode. The innovation gap. China graduates 8x more STEM PhDs than the U.S. annually. Quote, "We're trying to sanction the sun." Singapore's Lee Hsien Loong on U.S. tech bans. For decades, Europe relied on a simple formula. U.S. security, plus Russian energy, plus Chinese trade, prosperity. But in 2024, that equation is collapsing. Washington demands Europe cut ties with Beijing. Moscow's gas is now off limits, and as tariffs shred supply chains, factories from Germany to Italy face extinction. The result? A continent trapped between loyalty to NATO and the grim reality of economic suicide. This installment analyzes deindustrialization, tsunami, why German factories are fleeing to the U.S. and China, the U.S. energy trap, how American LNG replaced Russian gas at 4x the price, far-right revolt, anti-tariff protests from France to Poland, the silent mutiny, EU nations secretly bypassing U.S. sanctions on China, the Macron doctrine, Europe's desperate bid for strategic autonomy. 1. Germany's industrial collapse. The German economic model, cheap Russian gas plus precision exports to China, is imploding. The Exodus, BASF, built a $10 billion chemical plant in China, citing uncompetitive EU energy costs. Volkswagen, 40% of its sales are in China, now shifting R&D to Xinjiang to comply with Beijing's rules. Siemens, quietly lobbying Brussels to soften China's sanctions, fearing retaliation. The data. German industrial output has fallen for 15 straight months. Workers' protest sign in Dortmund. Washington's tariffs are killing our jobs. 2. The U.S. LNG heist. After sabotaging Nord Stream 2, America became Europe's gas dealer, with brutal terms. Price gouging. U.S. LNG costs 12 FOS mm versus pre-war Russian gas at 3. The lock-in. EU signed 20-year contracts with U.S. firms like Cheniere, while Biden banned new EU gas projects as anti-climate. Hypocrisy. The U.S. increased its oil production by 2 million barrels a day since 2022, more than Saudi Arabia. Leaked memo from Total Energies. CEO. We are financing America's shale boom with our poverty. 3. The tariff protests. Go mainstream farmers aren't the only ones revolting. France. Le Pen's party leads polls by vowing to veto EU-US trade deals. Italy. Meloni's government defied Washington to join China's Belt and Road before quietly exiting. Poland. Truckers block highways over Ukrainian grain imports, a proxy fight over U.S. influence. EU internal poll, 62% say the U.S. exploits Europe. 4. Sanctions? What sanctions? Brussels publicly backs U.S. tech bans while companies cheat. ASML's lost machines. Dutch firm accidentally shipped 12 advanced lithography systems to China post-ban. BMW's Xinjiang plant uses Uyghur labor but labels cars made for EU. The Hungary loophole. Orban lets Chinese firms like KTL build factories as EU projects. Anonymous EU trade official, we pretend to enforce. They pretend to comply. 5. Macron's gambit. A third pole. France is pushing Europe to break free. The nuclear option. Revive EU defense industry to reduce NATO dependence. China overtures. Macron's 2023 Beijing trip secured rare earth deals, infuriating Washington. Euro Army dreams a proposed 5 Troop rapid force blocked by Germany. Leaked U.S. diplomatic cable. Macron is the most dangerous man in Europe. to us. For 80 years, the U.S. dollar reigned supreme, backed by oil, military might, and the IMF's chokehold on debt. But in 2024, a mutiny is underway. Brazil buys Russian oil in yuan. India settles UAE trade in rupees. Even France pays China in renminbi. The weaponization of the dollar has backfired, and the global south is forging a new financial order, one where America is no longer the banker of last resort. This installment uncovers the sanctions boomerang. How freezing Russia's reserves accelerated de-dollarization. BRICS 2, the 40 nations lining up to join, including Saudi Arabia and Iran. Gold and oil, the silent return of commodity-backed currencies. The IMF's existential crisis as countries default and refuse bailout terms. The Petruan overtake, China's masterstroke in the Middle East. 1. How America shot itself in the dollar. The seizure of $300 billion in Russian central bank assets was a historic miscalculation. The backlash. China dumped $200 billion in U.S. Treasuries in 2023, replacing them with gold. India negotiated a rupee-ruble mechanism for Russian coal. Brazil's Lula. Why should trade depend on the dollar? It's an absurdity. Data point. Dollar's share in global reserves fell to 58%, from 72% in 2001. Leaked Russian central bank memo. The West just proved our gold is safer than their bonds. BRICS goes viral. The anti-Western bloc is expanding, fast. New applicants, 2024. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia, Argentina, Indonesia. The plan, common currency. Not yet a BRICS dollar, but a trade clearing system bypassing SWIFT. Development Bank, lending in local currencies, sans IMF austérité. The U.S. blind spot. Treasury Secretary Yellen dismissed BRICS as a China fantasy. Now it handles 35% of global GDP. South African diplomat, Washington laughs until they see Riyadh pricing oil in yuan. 3. The Gold Rush 2. Zero nations are hoarding bullion like it's 1944. Top buyers, 2023. China added 225 tons while hiding true totals. Poland bought 130 tons. NATO's quiet defector. India's temple stash, 500 tons of gold held in temples, untaxed. The signal. Gold purchases hit a 55-year high, a vote against fiat currencies. Zoltan Pozsar, ex-Credit Suisse. The monetary system is fracturing into blocks. Gold East versus Debt West. 4. The IMF's rebellion countries are choosing default over submission. Pakistan refused IMF demands to cut subsidies, then took a 3B Chinese bailout. Zambia defaulted, then signed mining deals with Beijing, sidelining Western creditors. Argentina's wild card, Milei campaigned to dollarize, but now begs for BRICS yuan loans. Former IMF economist. We used to say fiscal reform or starvation. Now they say try China. 5. China's Middle East coup. The petrodollar's death knell, Saudi Arabia, now accepts yuan for 12% of oil sales, up from 0% in 2022. Iraq dumped dollars for oil trades in March 2024. The gas station theory, if the Gulf abandons dollars, the Fed loses its inflation shield. Anonymous U.S. Navy officer. We used to protect tankers for dollar loyalty. What's our leverage now? The U.S. national debt now exceeds $35 trillion, a figure so vast it defies comprehension. To put it in perspective, every American household owes $260, and the debt grows by $1 trillion every 100 days. For decades, Washington operated on a simple premise. The world will always lend to us. But in 2024, the cracks are showing. Bond markets are revolting, foreign creditors are fleeing, and the Federal Reserve faces an impossible choice: trigger a depression by raising rates to defend the dollar, or inflate the debt away and destroy savings. This installment exposes the bond market mutiny, why U.S. Treasuries are no longer risk-free, the Fed's suicide pact, how quantitative tightening could collapse the system. The entitlements mirage, Social Security and Medicare's 116 trillion shortfall. The 2024 election illusion, why neither Trump nor Biden can fix this. The endgame default, hyperinflation, or a new Bretton Woods. 1. The Treasury market's silent panic. U.S. government bonds were once the world's safest asset. Now they're a gamble. The warning signs, foreign dumpers, China and Japan sold $500 billion in treasuries since 2021. Yield surge, 10-year rates hit 25% in 2023, the highest since 2007. The buyer's strike. At a recent auction, 20% of bonds went unsold. The doom loop. Higher rates, more debt spending, even higher rates. Ray Dalio's warning. When the world doesn't want your debt, you're Argentina, but with nukes. 2. The Fed's impossible choice. Jerome Powell is trapped. Option 1. Keep rates high. Pros, stabilizes the dollar, lures bond buyers. Cons, crushes the economy, mortgages hit 8%, bankruptcies soar. Option 2. Cut rates. Pros, keeps the debt bubble alive. Cons, triggers a dollar collapse, hyperinflation. Leaked Fed memo, 2024. We are out of tools. The next crisis will be fiscal, not monetary. 3. The entitlements mirage, Social Security and Medicare are mathematically doomed. The numbers, Social Security runs out of reserves by 2033. Medicare, insolvent by 2028. Total unfunded liabilities, $116 trillion, 6x U.S. GDP. The political third rail. No candidate will admit benefits must be cut. CBO director's testimony. Even taxing 100% of incomes over $1 million wouldn't close the gap. 4. The 2024 election, a distraction. Trump and Biden's solutions are fantasy. Trump's plan, grow the economy 6%. U.S. hasn't hit 3% since 2005. Biden's plan, tax the rich, or even seizing all billionaire wealth covers just 1 year of deficits. The reality, debt interest alone will cost $6 trillion annually by 2025, more than defense or Medicare. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, we're on a path to Latin American-style crisis. 5. The endgame, 3 scenarios. The default, least likely, U.S. temporarily stops payments, triggering global chaos. Outcome, dollar loses reserve status overnight. The inflation escape, most likely, Fed prints money to buy treasuries, erasing debt value. Outcome, 1970s stagflation on steroids. The new Bretton Woods global reset, dollar devalued, gold-backed system returns. Outcome, Americans lose 30–50% of purchasing power. Investor Jim Rogers, when the U.S. can't borrow, it will confiscate. Think 1933 gold seizures, but for your 401k.